Welcome to Evolve Together with Empower People, where people are power. I'm Tiffany Joy Greene, MBA. Here, clarity cuts, humor heals, and purpose drives transformation. Join the movement at www.empowerpeople.org and connect with us on YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn, and Facebook, because when people are power, purpose wins. Welcome to Evolve Together with Empower People. I'm Tiffany Joy Greene. This week feels heavy. A fatal shooting involving federal immigration agents, nationwide strike calls, questions about belonging, a looming government shutdown, a new Federal Reserve Chair announcement. It would be easy to treat these as separate headlines. They're not. They're one story. The story is trust. Who has it? Who has lost it? And what happens when institutions and citizens no longer see reality the same way? Let's slow this down. Before we dive into this week's headlines, let's ground ourselves in our story. The last week of January has repeatedly marked moments when ambition collided with accountability and when power was tested by consequence. On January 24, 1848, gold is discovered in California. That single moment triggered the gold rush. Opportunity exploded, wealth shifted, migration accelerated, but so did displacement, so did exploitation, so did the removal of native populations. It's a reminder that economic expansion often carries a shadow. Growth without guardrails reshapes power, sometimes violently. On January 27, 1967, the Apollo 1 fire. 3 astronauts died during a test on the launch pad. Investigations later revealed warnings about safety had been raised. They weren't taken seriously enough. Progress was the goal, speed was the pressure, and precaution lost. Institutions learned. NASA redesigned. Protocols strengthened. But the lesson remains. When urgency overrides caution, trust fractures. And on January 28, 1986, the Challenger disaster. Another moment where technical warnings were known and dismissed under pressure to perform. Again, the country watched in real time. Again, tragedy forced reform. The pattern is clear. When systems prioritize momentum over integrity, consequences follow. On January 30th, 1933, Adolf Hitler is appointed Chancellor of Germany, not by coup, not by riot, but through legal process. History teaches us something sobering here. Power consolidation often looks procedural before it looks authoritarian. Democracies rarely collapse in a single dramatic moment. They erode in increments. And then, January 31st, 1865, Congress passes the 13th Amendment. Slavery abolished in law, a radical restructuring of power, a moral correction written into the Constitution. But here's the tension. Legal change does not instantly produce cultural change. Law can move faster than trust, and trust takes generations to rebuild. So what does this last week of January teach us? It teaches us that expansion without ethics destabilizes nations. Progress without listening to warnings costs lives. Legal authority does not equal moral legitimacy. Structural reform requires cultural follow-through. History doesn't repeat, but it does in rhyme. And when we see headlines today about enforcement, protests, shutdown threats, economic shifts, or power posturing, we're not watching something unprecedented. We're watching another chapter in the ongoing tension between authority and accountability. Our story reminds us, moments of pressure reveal what institutions value most, and moments of pressure reveal who we are. A 37-year-old ICU nurse, Alex Pretti, was fatally shot by federal immigration agents during an enforcement confrontation in Minneapolis. Initial footage showed agents restraining him before the shooting. Days later, a second video surfaced reportedly showing Pretti and a violent confrontation 11 days prior to the incident. Federal officials maintain the shooting was justified. Protesters argue it reflects excessive force and systemic aggression. Let's be precise. There are two things happening at once. One, a human being is dead. Two, competing narratives are forming around why. And this is where public's nervous system spikes. When video evidence is partial, when context is staggered, when officials speak before investigations conclude, the deeper issue isn't just the shooting, it's this. When truth feels fragmented, trust collapses. And once trust collapses, everything becomes ideological. Nationwide strike calls. In response, protesters are organizing nationwide strikes against immigration enforcement policies. A strike is not a protest sign. A strike is economic leverage. It signals the message, we believe participation in normal systems supports something we can't morally accept. That is powerful. But here's the leadership question. Are people striking from clarity or from emotional acceleration? Collective action without strategy becomes symbolic. Collective action with strategy becomes structural. The difference matters. Another headline gaining traction. Native Americans rushing to prove their citizenship status and right to belong amid enforcement fears. Pause with that. The first inhabitants of this land needing to prove belonging. This isn't partisan, it's existential. When people who predate the Republic feel insecure about legitimacy, it signals that identity narratives are destabilized. Belonging is not paperwork. Belonging is foundational to national trust. Meanwhile, Senate leaders are racing to save a bipartisan deal and avoid a partial government shutdown. What's at stake? Funding for agencies, DHS budgets, operational continuity. Shutdown threats are not abstract. They shake economic stability, federal workers' paychecks, and business confidence. When institutions wobble financially while citizens wobble emotionally, instability compounds. President Trump has named former Federal Reserve official Kevin Warsh as the next Fed chair to replace Jerome Powell. The Federal Reserve isn't political theater. It controls monetary policy, inflation signals, interest rates, the architecture of economic confidence. A new chair signals potential shifts in economic direction, and in moments like this, markets watch closely because economic confidence is fragile. Journalist Don Lemon was arrested in connection with protest coverage. Whether one agrees with him or not, the arrest of journalists during politically volatile moments intensifies scrutiny around press freedom. The First Amendment is not decorative, it's structural. Here's what ties all of this together. Force, protest, belonging, shutdown threats, economic shifts, press arrests. This is a moment of renegotiating legitimacy. When citizens question enforcement, when enforcement questions resistance, when institutions question funding, when leadership questions global alliances, the common denominator is this: trust is thin. Here's how you can lead yourself in thin trust environments. 1. Don't rush to conclusions. Information released in phases often changes narratives. 2. Separate tragedy from agenda. Human loss deserves dignity before debate. 3. Strengthen local trust. If national trust feels unstable, build it in your immediate sphere. 4. Diversify your information diet, not to confirm beliefs, but to test them. And 5. Protect your nervous system. Chronic outrage erodes judgment. If this moment feels like too much to sort through alone, if the world feels louder than your clarity, that's why the Purpose Reset Architecture session exists. 1 hour, focused, intentional, strategic. We slow everything down. We separate signal from spin. We design your next step. You don't need more noise, you need alignment. The link is in the description. This is not a week for certainty. It's a week for discipline. Clarity is not passive, it's practiced. This is Evolve Together with Empower People, where clarity beats chaos and people remain the power. Stay grounded, stay intentional, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join Empower People by visiting our website, MPWRPeople, MPWRPeople.org today.